What is up, guys? It's your favorite veteran entrepreneur, Parker McCumber, back with season 2 of Based Business. I'm your host. I am a U.S. Army veteran, serial entrepreneur. I completed my undergrad in business management and military leadership, my master's degree in business administration, and am currently pursuing a doctorate of business administration. If you don't know me, now you know. We're about to start a 10-episode arc that covers the things you need to know when you look to start your own business. Today, we're going to jump into a topic called Understanding the Basics of Business and Entrepreneurship. I've created a little presentation. I'd like to go ahead and if you're watching with us on YouTube, you'll be able to share it. If not, fear not, because I will talk you through all of it. Understanding the basics of business and entrepreneurship. First things first, and keep in mind, this is very broad strokes for individuals who don't know what they don't know, or who are maybe just looking to start scratching the surface of a career in business or entrepreneurship. So I'm going to go over some of the things that I wish I knew maybe when I started, the things that I think are general good knowledge tips for somebody who's looking to either start a business, take an interest in business ownership, or become an entrepreneur. So the first question we're going to answer, what is a business? Ultimately, a business is going to be an organization, an entity that provides goods or services for the purpose of making a profit. That's very important, especially in today's society. People demonize the term profit. And I actually think that's like a super evil thing to do. You look at all the good that's being done in the world right now from people who are wildly successful, like Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast, famous YouTuber, installing thousands of wells in Africa, right? Giving, I don't know, countless people access to clean water. And, none of that is possible if he's not earning, right? There's a concept popularized by a coach that I admire. His name's Akbar Sheikh. Make more to give more, right? You have to make profit for your efforts to be sustainable, for your efforts to be scalable. So it's important for a business to provide goods and services, but they have to be profitable. They have to make a profit. If it's not making a profit, it's a liability. It's not an asset. It's not a business. So some key components that we should probably just touch on real quick. Value creation, right? Providing goods and services is great. If they don't create value for your customer, then ultimately they're worthless and nobody's going to pay for those goods or services. So 1, business needs to be creating value. 2, think about the business operations, right? When I first started, I was a single person that was doing everything from marketing to product creation to fulfillment. It was just me. And it was a great experience and opportunity for me to learn as I grew and learn as I went throughout the business process. But there's obviously a lot of factors that maybe go into that I was unaware of. For example, I was staying well into the evenings to make calls with manufacturers and suppliers and trying to figure things out. And that's the kind of stuff that I just didn't think about prior to moving into it. So key components, you need to understand value creation, you need to understand operations, and then you have to have that profit motive. Again, if you're not trying to make money, if that's not your driving force in a business, then you don't have a business, right? Maybe it's a nonprofit organization, charity. I mean, there's other entities beyond profit-driven businesses, but for business and entrepreneurship purposes, for this based business conversation, you need to be profit-driven. Okay, what is entrepreneurship? The process of designing, launching, and running a business. Key aspects of entrepreneurship are going to be innovation, risk-taking, vision, and I kind of summarize that in the quote. entrepreneurs solve problems. I think that that's particularly important when you look at the aspect of innovation, right? When you think about a business owner, somebody in business manager, maybe they are providing those goods and services. They're facilitating that value creation, transferring towards a customer, right? The entrepreneur is the person with the vision and the innovation to kind of make those, value creating products and services a reality, right? And the way they do that is they find a problem and they solve the problem, right? And there's some inherent risk in that. One, they're investing a significant amount of their time, personal lives. Maybe, they're dipping into the family bank a little bit to make these visions come to reality, come to fruition. So an entrepreneur is somebody who's solving a problem, designing, launching, running, creating that business. Key traits of successful entrepreneurs. So I actually did a qualitative study back in 2019 while I was attending Utah Valley University for my senior thesis. And full disclosure, the study was on what makes veterans more likely or more successful to become entrepreneurs. And it was ultimately a really interesting study. If you don't know, according to the Small Business Administration, roughly 10% of small businesses are owned by entrepreneurs, which is a pretty large number when you consider that less than half of a singular percent of people serves in the military. So obviously there was something that was making them increasingly likely to participate in business. And while I'm not going to dive into that fully, these are the 5 traits that identified through interviews and through anecdotal evidence surveys, that kind of stuff. So number 1 trait of a successful entrepreneur is communication. And communication is kind of it's a buzzword, but it's a little bit more in depth than what I think most people would give it credit for. When people think about being an effective communicator on the civilian side, they think about how well can you dictate what is happening, what needs to happen, right? In the military, and keep in mind, these are traits that were helping veterans become entrepreneurs and find success in it. The military teaches a very specific communication style, right? They teach writing and speaking in the active voice, and you actually have that as part of your military education when you're looking at promotions and leadership courses. So active communication and two-way communication, those are the big ones here. Make sure that we're proactive and make sure that communication is able to flow up to leadership and back down to subordinates, that the message is being received on both ends, that it's clear, concise, to the point. Successful trait number 2, flexibility. And this also is adaptability. Ultimately, there's going to be a million things you have to do as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and you're not going to necessarily know how to do all of them. And there's going to be things that pop up as you do one thing. It's like whack-a-mole. You knock one mole down, another one pops up. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to be flexible and kind of roll with those punches a little bit. For example, if you've got orders that are needing to go out, the holidays are coming up, and the FedEx truck misses them, man, you're putting those in the back of your truck, you're getting them out, because you have to be providing that value to those customers. Your value is a little bit in service, right? So be able to adapt to problems, be able to adapt and move around obstacles. If your plan doesn't work on the first time, you can't just throw in the towel and find success as an entrepreneur. If you fail, you have to find a way to try again, to overcome the obstacle, to move on and succeed. Trait number 3, leadership. I love leadership. Obviously, I'm still pursuing leadership in the military. I'm still pursuing it in civilian business. My doctorate is in business administration with an emphasis on organizational leadership. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And the real successful aspect of this is kind of maybe all encompassing of these traits, but you have to be able to provide other individuals with purpose, motivation, direction. And they have to be able to trust you. I think trust is an often overlooked aspect of leadership. But if someone doesn't trust that you know what's best or how to accomplish it, then they have no incentive, no desire to follow you because they don't believe you're going anywhere. A big aspect of this is also going to be your confidence, right? If you're not confident in yourself, why would somebody else be confident in you? So you need to be able to lead yourself before you can lead an organization. And if that means you have to figure out where your life is going and what your vision is and what your personal mission statement is, then you need to go write those things down, figure that out, and then take the step forward. Trait number 4, problem solving. So problem solving ties into flexibility, I think, pretty well. Also ties into leadership pretty well. Ultimately, you're going to encounter problems that you're not necessarily knowledgeable or equipped to handle. For example, I'm currently running into issues dealing with the technical side of Facebook, right? And I can't make all those fixes myself. So I'm constantly problem solving. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm working with people who know more than me in those areas anyways. So that's not necessarily what you have to do, is reach out for other people, but you have to be willing to find ways to overcome problems. This is a big aspect that draws on critical thinking, right? You have to be able to analyze and assess what the problem is, and then find creative ways to work around and overcome that problem. Step number 5, or trait number 5, risk management. So risk management's a big one for me. I draw on the military risk management model, but ultimately you have to recognize as an entrepreneur, you're investing a lot of your personal life, your time, your money, your blood, your sweat, your tears into what you're doing, into the business you're creating, the value that you're trying to drive. And there's inherent risk in that. Additionally, you're the one making the decisions that's going to drive the organization forward, and there's risk associated with those. So you need to adapt ways to handle risk and then mitigate risk as necessary to make decisions and choices logical and reasonable, right? You don't want to accept a risk if it's unreasonable. But if you can mitigate the risk and make it reasonable, then maybe it's something that you want to pursue. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about research and planning. These are things that I think often go overlooked, especially when you hear somebody talk about, oh, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do, t-shirts. I'm going to do hats. And they have these ideas that they're just going to create and they're going to have a successful business. The reality is they probably haven't put in the research to figure out the realities of that market, of that niche, and then subsequently done the business planning to create something that's feasible, realistic, and will drive them forward. So we're going to cover a little bit of those topics real quick. The basics of research and planning. We're going to talk about market understanding underneath the basics of research and planning. And market understanding really involves your ability to comprehend the dynamics of the market that you're entering, including what your customers' needs are, what your competitors are doing, and what the market trends are, right? And the way that you're going to gain this market understanding is really through thorough research methods. A lot of people like to use surveys. Some people use interviews. Others use data analysis. I think the best answer is a combination where you're collecting data from as many sources as possible, so you're becoming as thorough as possible in your research. And then subsequently, you have to analyze what's going on with that data to kind of understand what's real in your market and what isn't. Subsequently, analyzing competitors to understand their strengths and weaknesses, as well as their strategies. This is something that I think is crucial. One, in business and anything, really, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? If you can see something's working and something is good, you can analyze that, draw the pros out of it, also find the cons, and then create something that's better, right? That's the best way to kind of get a foothold in business. Obviously, you want to understand what you have as strengths and weaknesses. But you also want to understand what the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors are, so that you can appropriately strategize on how you're going to protect your business and also grow in market share. Keeping abreast of industry trends through trade publications, reports, and thought leaders. This is crucial, I think, and definitely overlooked by most budding entrepreneurs, right? Especially when you start to have a little bit of success in business, it's really easy to just think you know everything and you're going to keep going. In reality, learn from the people who have more experience than you. And some of the ways you can do that, trade publications, like we said, people publish, right? And they share thoughts and they share information. That's easy to access now. And I mean, we live in a world of modern technology. You can find articles shared online, whether they're, formal trade publications, whether they're opinion pieces. There's like infinite data at this point. So you should probably be learning from it continuously. Reports, these can be generated from yourself, your own data gathering, but also from what's going on across the industry and the market. I like to look at trends from like the Small Business Association, Pew Research, credible organizations mostly here, and then thought leaders. One of the thought leaders that kind of inspired me to get started in entrepreneurship and figure out mostly the digital aspect of it was like Russell Brunson, and his books on expert secrets was the first one that I read, but .com, the linchpin, those books now. So there's always going to be, there's a saying, there's always a bigger fish. The thought leaders, while you might become a thought leader, or maybe you even are a thought leader, that doesn't mean you can't learn things from other people. So I make it a point to try and study the works of other people, try to study and understand what they do, the strategies they use, learn from them, internalize them, take what I like, take what I don't like, and create my own method or my own strategy and plan that's going to work for me in my niche. Okay, we talked briefly about risk management earlier. I think one of the key things that entrepreneurs and young business owners can get out of business research and then subsequently plan for is risk mitigation, right? So risk mitigation is going to be how you compensate and deal with things like financial uncertainty, legal liability, or strategic management errors, accidents, natural disasters, really anything that could harm your business or upset your business from operating. Identifying potential risks is the first step in mitigation. And how do you identify those risks? Research-based, right? So as a new entrepreneur, if you're starting a company, one of the greatest risks you have initially is like, are you choosing to take funding? Are you choosing to get a loan? There's a huge financial risk in that, right? For other businesses, you could think, what additional risks are they incurring when they do certain things? For example, if you operate out of the back of a food truck, there's risk associated with owning, operating, driving a food truck, right? If you're a restaurant, food poisoning, that could be a risk to your company. If you have a physical product business and you create products and you have a bad batch that like QC just doesn't catch, and you send out a bunch of garbage to some people, that's going to hurt your brand, hurt your reputation. So risks come in all different ways is what I'm really trying to get at here. And then what are the strategies for risk mitigation? I think the number one way, similar to investing, is going to be diversification, right? And this could be diversification of products and services. It could be diversification of markets that you operate in. But ultimately, I'm a big believer of not putting all your eggs in one basket. Second strategy is insurance. On season 1, episode 1, we had a guest host, Jacob Brad Johnson. He is an insurance whiz. If you're in Utah, hit him up. He will take care of you. Jacob, that's a free shout out. I expect you to hit me back with one later. But insurance is a tool that can help prevent you from absorbing the full blow of certain risks. Third strategy, implementing strong internal controls and compliance policies. This can be things like quality control. This can be things like human resource policies. Ultimately, you have to assess what the risks you are exposed to and what your company is exposed to, and then figure out how you're going to mitigate those. Lastly, developing robust contingency and business continuity plans, right? I've got, a few factories that we've done business with. If one goes down, we're just transferring business to the other, but developing contingency plans on how you're going to progress should you run into a substantial problem. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about business of resource allocation, the basics of business resource allocation. This again in the scope of research and planning. Quick sip of water and a shout out to our sponsor real quick. That sponsor is me, Parker McCumber, because I'm putting my time into these presentations and nobody's paying me yet. But help me, like and subscribe on YouTube or something like that. Okay, moving on. Basics of research and planning, resource allocation. So resource allocation is ultimately distributing the available resources. Think of things like time, money, manpower, materials. Those are all resources you have in a manner that maximizes your business efficiency. Ultimately, resource allocation must align with the business's strategic goals, right? It doesn't make sense to allocate a bunch of time and money into your direct mail campaign in a zip code that's on the other side of the nation if you're a physical store front, in Orem, Utah. I don't want to be sending my mailers to Florida, right? So you want to make sure that your resource allocation is aligning with the business's goals. If you want to be, say, the best muscular strength and endurance trainer, and you're trying to scale muscular strength and endurance coaching to I don't know, $1 million a year, we'll say. And that's your strategic goal. It doesn't make a lot of sense for you to, I don't know, maybe assign your time and money into how do you help your neighbor do advertising on Facebook for cat food, right? It's just not going to make a ton of sense for you. Make sure that your what you're doing is aligned with what your end state is, what your vision is for the long term. That's a bogus example, I guess I just gave you. Keep in mind, these episodes are not scripted, right? I created a little PowerPoint for this, but this is not rehearsed or anything like that. I just keep it fresh flowing for you guys. And I hope you appreciate that. And if you don't, oh well, I'm going to keep doing it. Moving on. You're going to face some challenges, and these are some strategies that you can use to better allocate your resources. So one challenge, balancing short-term needs with long-term strategic goals, right? This is tough, especially when it comes to resource allocation, because sometimes you see a problem and you want to throw resources at it and get it fixed. And that's not necessarily the most efficient way to do it. That's the quickest way to do it, but it's not necessarily efficient. And you sacrifice some measure of long-term success when you do this. Ultimately, the entrepreneur, the business owner, you've got to make the decision of what's right for your organization. But keep in mind, you don't want to sell out the future for the now, and you don't want to go all in on the future and shortchange yourself now. Utilizing tools for effective resource management. When I think about this, I think about things like trackers. For example, some of the ads I run, I use a software called Hyros. Hyros is a third-party system that more accurately tracks and attributes where sales are coming from. So I know what ads are actually working better, right? So that lets me then allocate my ad spend more efficiently. So that's a tool that we can use for that. Other tools we use, we have software that finds best shipping costs and things like that. So don't try to do everything yourself. find the tools and the resources available to make yourself and your company more effective at managing its resources. Okay, regular reviews and adjustments are a great way that you can make sure that your resource allocation is evolving, current, and regulated, right? If you keep in mind that you have, yourself, people, these things take time, sure, but you want to make sure that you're not just wasting money, time, manpower, materials unnecessarily. So regular reviews and adjustments that can help make sure that things are running smoothly and efficiently, and then you can allocate appropriately. Okay, optimizing resource utilization. This is like the planning aspect of this. It's important to prioritize projects based on your return on investment and strategic alignment with your goals. So if you have, we were just talking about this the other night with a solar salesman that came over. But there's this concept of the time value of money. And if you have the ability to put that money to work in something that's going to pay you like 10% return, that's definitely preferential to something that's going to give you a 3% return, right? So you want to make sure that the return on investment is strong and you have a moral and ethical obligation to yourself, to your family, to your business, to your employees, to your stockholders to be doing this, right? And also techniques for maximizing resource efficiency, like lean management. If you're not familiar with the term lean management, ultimately that, like in summary, could be cutting costs and waste to provide the most value possible at the best value possible. So ultimately, I say ultimately a lot. Hope you guys aren't getting sick of it. Just make sure that what you're doing is really efficient, is really effective, is actually making a change and driving value. Okay, looking back at entrepreneurship now, selecting the niche maybe, we'll talk about the importance of passion and resilience, right? These are my recommendations for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. Passion. If you have some deep, burning love for a niche, for a field, that's probably where you should be working or identifying problems and solving the problems in that field, right? For me, it started off as like the firearms community, Second Amendment themed, patriotic type stuff, because my background was military. I was passionate about firearms. I loved shooting. I was competitive, So I picked a niche that I was passionate about. And with that passion comes a little bit of authenticity in your creatives, your like the content you put out, the videos you put out, the pictures you put out. It's real, it's authentic, it's things that people actually care about. And that adds value to the organization. It builds your credibility, builds the legitimacy of the company as a whole. And it's also something that you can be committed to, right? If you have passion about something, you're committed to it. You want to succeed in it. You want to drive that thing forward. Things are very important for choosing your niche. If you're not passionate about something and you're just looking to like sell, dog leashes for $5 on Amazon or something like that, you're not actually motivated to make that thing grow and succeed, right? You're just trying to find a product to churn and burn. You can make money doing that, I guess. It's not the way that I would want to build a business because it's not real. It's something that dies as soon as you turn it off. So I'm looking to build things that are lasting, create change in the world, change in myself at least. And then let's talk about the importance of resilience really quick. We mentioned obstacles that you have to overcome earlier. This is continuous, man. Like I've been doing the entrepreneurship thing for 6-7 years now, and it's like never ending. You will always have a problem. You will always have a challenge. There's always something to overcome, right? Learning from failure is also, I think, super important here, right? You could choose to be a failure. You take your L and you're sad and that's it. Or I like to think of it as remolding my mindset a little bit. I'm not failing, I'm learning, right? Learning from failure. So you might take an L once in a while, identify what you did wrong, assess how you can do it better, learn from that mistake, continue to grow, continue overcoming obstacles, and get back at it. And I think that if you put those two things together, the overcoming obstacles, the learning from failure, that is how you find long-term success, right? If you can overcome obstacles consistently and you can learn from the attempts that you don't overcome the obstacle, you will find long-term success because you'll continue to grow in your experience, in your knowledge, in your confidence. So those are two big recommendations I have for entrepreneurs. You have to be passionate about the field you're going into, and you should be resilient. Okay, let's talk takeaways from this presentation. Number one, businesses should create value and earn a profit. If your business isn't profitable, it's a liability. It's not a business. A lot of people would fight me on that. There's a lot of companies that are not profitable, but it's not sustainable or scalable if it's not profitable. Second, entrepreneurs should develop skills that will help them succeed and choose a niche that they are passionate about. These skills are communication, flexibility, leadership, problem solving, and risk management, right? Those are the 5 skills that the qualitative research kind of indicated were things that were driving entrepreneur success. Also, find something you're passionate about and then refuse to fail. Overcome obstacles, learn. Okay, before you decide to start a business, do your research. Find out what the market's like. Find out what the operations are going to be like. Make a plan, right? Before deciding to start your business, do your research. After your research, you can appropriately plan. Okay, that is the presentation I have for you guys on the basics of business and entrepreneurship for our first episode in the 10-episode arc of Base Business Season 2. If you have questions and comments, I would love to hear them. Take them over to YouTube. You're going to find me at Parker McCumber or something to that effect. And, underneath this video, you go ahead and drop your comments. I will respond to those as quickly as I see them. I appreciate your time, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.